Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So this week, obviously, we had the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, and a lot has been said about that. A lot has been said about him being a good man, doing a lot of good work, leaving behind a legacy and shoes that it's going to be very hard to fill. But today, I wanted to focus on where I think we go from here in wake of that legacy and in wake of that absence he's going to leave, because he was a massive figure. He was a towering figure in the conservative movement. He did a lot of good work. He inspired a lot of young people. And now that he's gone, essentially martyred for his cause of his belief in Christianity and conservatism, where do we go? Well, the point I've seen made a lot, it's the point I agree with the most, is that young men will probably flood to Nick Fuentes. I saw that despite Ben Shapiro saying he's going to pick up the microphone and take over TPUSA, I think the beliefs of young men already align more with Nick Fuentes than they do with Ben Shapiro by a lot. I think a lot of Charlie Kirk's base was encouraging him to move further to the right, ask questions about Israel, things they disagree with, push him socially, more to the right. And Ben Shapiro is a Zionist. He's not Christian. He socially is more liberal than I think of where a lot of young men are. And so I think a lot of young men will flood towards Nick Fuentes, who is further right, because they just saw their icon, their role model, assassinated for wanting to discuss ideas with people on the left. And they saw that led to his death, that Charlie Kirk tried to do the right thing, tried to have open, honest discussions with people, tried to change their minds through a mechanism other than violence. And they killed him for it. And so I think a lot of young men will see this as they're angry, they're sad, and they want to listen to somebody who tells them that things are going to be okay, but also that this country is broken in a way that the current ideals of the RNC are not going to fix. The perpetual watering down of conservatism is not going to fix this place. And listening to Ben Shapiro, who's not Christian, is not going to fix this place. They want to listen to another Christian like Charlie Kirk. They want to go to somebody who is socially very, very conservative like Charlie Kirk, but who is a lot more aggressive and belligerent. And that's Nick Fuentes to a T. He's a young man. He represents young men. He grew up in the same lifestyle as basically his entire audience. There's not that many options on the right for them to flood to, and I think that's the natural conclusion. And we can see that play out because last night Nick Fuentes had his first stream since the incident, and he brought over 170,000 concurrent viewers that I had seen, and over 1.5 million people have already watched it. He said some very nice things about Charlie Kirk. He didn't walk back his position of saying he didn't really like him. They weren't friends. They disagreed a lot. But he made the points that Charlie Kirk is irreplaceable in his movement and with, the young men. He did so much in such a short amount of time. He was a good father, a good husband, a good friend, it seemed. And he died for his faith. He was doing what he believed to be right. He was standing up for his principles, and he was martyred for trying to put himself out there to make the country a better place for everybody, to push Christian ideals. That's why he died. And so Nick made those points, and it was very nice of him. He didn't walk back his previous positions, but he also said, this is not where we should be. We should not be calling for violence. And we shouldn't have violence imposed on people because they disagree with you. And so that stream, I think, is going to be very impactful. And it's not like he was trying to say, I'm the new leader now. I'm your figure. Nothing like that. I just think that the people are going to elevate him. He's already on what Patrick Bet-David called the generational run, and he's gaining a lot of influence. And his, prominent opponent in the conservative space has been killed. And a lot of young men were already kind of groypers and leaning in that direction. They still like Charlie Kirk and they still like being part of TPUSA. And but despite those two being opponents, you're still on the same side. You were arguing because you wanted to, iron against iron. How do you really get to the core of these issues? That what does a Christian do? What does a Christian act like? What does Christian conservatism mean in the United States? That's what you are fighting for. Is like, what are those definitions truly ground down to their core, versus the left, which is godless, relativistic, and violent. That's why I think a lot of young men will move towards Nick Fuentes, and I thought we saw that last night. And that doesn't leave the legacy of Charlie Kirk empty, because he brought all those people into conservatism. He had discussions with people. He changed a lot of people's minds, and he showed us what one person can do, with a lot of concerted effort and with God's grace and with aligning himself properly with his ideals and beliefs and fighting to those till literally his death, his martyrdom. So I think future of conservatism will not be scared away from this. They won't shy away from this. If anything, it'll make them more radical. I think Charlie Kirk, if you line up every single conservative pundit, he was basically in the middle. He was a moderate. He actually enjoyed engaging with people of the other side. And I think now you have a growing sense of people saying we can't discuss with these people. We can't negotiate with them. They're just insane and violent. That's not a good place to be in. You don't want more division. But that's, I think, where we're heading, because people say the person who actually tried to, be a peacemaker was killed for his efforts. And so a lot of conservatives will stop publicly engaging with the other side. Public events are not safe anymore, especially outdoor ones. And so conversations will be driven online. Well, we already have our echo chambers online. Twitter is relatively catch-all, but you have True Social on the right, you have Blue Sky on the left, you have online things like 4chan, which is pretty conservative overall, and Reddit, which is pretty liberal overall. And that's just going to make things worse when nobody engages with anybody else, or when they engage, everything's anonymous, so people, are very belligerent, very aggressive. That's not going to do us any wonders. You killed the one guy who was really trying to reach out and try to bridge that gap. And so it sent the message that anybody more conservative than him, which is probably like 50% of the people on the right or more, is a threat. And the answer to that threat is not discussion, it's violence. So that's just going to make things worse. And you've left, the far right as there's who's left. They're there to pick up the young men who are the future. And so I think, just from a human perspective, the violence just was not the answer, was just awful and like morally awful. But then at the same time, you also have the political effects of this, which is total miscalculation. You've taken out the moderate and left the extreme, the far. So I think that's what we'll see a increasing rise of the far right. I don't think Charlie's legacy will be in vain. And we'll have to see how everybody in the right wing responds to this as well in the left. There's been, to be fair, there's a lot of people on the left who immediately condemn this, were emotionally hurt by this. I saw Cenk Uygur immediately call this out. Dean Withers immediately visibly upset by this and saying this is not where we should be at. And then those people get attacked by their chat. Like I saw Dean Withers was attacked by his own supporters for sympathizing with Charlie Kirk. It's like a father and a husband just died. He was just killed. That's not... If you can't say that's wrong, there's something wrong with you. Political beliefs aside, those children won't have a father anymore, and the wife lost her husband. That's not ever a thing to celebrate. And so how the left responds to this too, this might drive some people further to the right. It may have people, turning against their audiences, or their audience turn against them. We'll see the people who are really strong in their beliefs on what they actually stand for when their apparatus of money making or popularity turns against them. And I think there's some people on the left who really are true believers and are not bad people calling for violence. There's certainly some of those. And so we'll have to see how everybody responds to this. Most importantly, Trump, who is a friend of Charlie Kirk's, how he responds to this act as president, what he can do reasonably to stop the political violence, and how we can kind of keep this from escalating, because unchecked, that's the direction things are trending, and we don't want that to happen. So overall, that's my thoughts on this. It'll be hard for anybody to fill Charlie Kirk's shoes. Going forward, it would be good to remember his legacy and everything he's done and the people he's touched in his life. And we want to prevent this from happening in the future, this tragedy. So that's all I really have to say about this at the moment. Pray for Charlie Kirk's soul. Pray for his family. Pray that we don't descend into violence, and that we can actually follow his example of trying to discuss with the other side.